Hi, my name is Roland and welcome to my VectrexRoli show. Lean back, relax and join me here for another retro home computer adventure. I'm a huge home computer fan. There are some computers I did not show you yet, like my Commodore Amigas for example, but I did show you some 1980s home computers on my show. For example, the Commodore VIC-20, Texas Instruments TR-99-4A and also the Sinclair ZX80 and Spectrum computers. So if you like old home computers, go and check out those videos. I will put some links in the description text below. Today I want to show you something very special here in more detail, the Sinclair ZX80. This computer is an extremely interesting collector's item and there are several videos about the machine on YouTube. You see people repairing it or you see some screen footage, but I really didn't find any kind of structured video so far showing all the details of the machine, including hardware, add-ons and software. So I thought the ZX80 definitely deserves a VectrexRoli special. First I planned that I will do a 3D video, similar to many other of my videos, but I decided then to go for standard 2D, reason being that the ZX80 is a very small computer and I cannot go very close to the machine when using 3D, so it is much easier to show you all the tiny details when using standard 2D. But first let's open up the box and let's see what's inside. By the way, this here is the original box, so this computer was shipped in that back in 1980 when this came on the market. What I want to do now is that I will show you all the contents of the box, then we will have a look at the machine, I will even open up the computer for you and show you what modifications I did, I will show you memory expansions for that computer and even a flash drive for it, and at the end we will have a look at some of the few software titles you can get for that computer. I really want this video here to be the ultimate Sinclair ZX80 special video, at least I want to try that. And yes, I say ZX instead of CX. You know I'm not an English native speaker, but ZX does sound more natural to me personally, as it comes close to what you would say in German language. First, let's have a quick look at the computer. This here was designed to be a very affordable machine, so it was intentionally designed to be quite limited and they cut away all expensive options and features. There is no sound output, only black and white graphics on the screen, and there is no proper keyboard. If you are one of my younger viewers, you might think that engineers didn't know how to build better computers back then, but that's not the case. They knew exactly how to design computers with colors, sprites, graphics, sound and even speech output. My first computer I ever got in the early 1980s, the TR-99, had all of that and even more, as it also had an add-on for speech recognition. Go and check that out on my channel if you want to see that. As always, you will find all the links in the description text below. But the main issue was that most computers were too expensive for the mass market, at least in the early 1980s. Back then people didn't really know what they can do with a computer, but they were interested in learning about computers, so a cheap entry-level machine was quite appealing. In the UK you could get the ZX80 in kit form for under 80 British pounds and as a ready-built version at under 100 British pounds, so the ZX80 was popular and for some time there was a waiting list of several months for that computer, and there was also a special version of the ZX80 available for the US market. Here are some technical details. There is a Z80 central processing unit built in. You got only 1 KB of static RAM, 4 KB of ROM, which was not much even back then. The PCB comes in a thin white plastic case with a blue membrane keyboard, and even the whole machine feels cheap and flimsy when using it. It looks great, and even today it looks more futuristic than most of the modern computers in my opinion. The case has some slightly yellowed spots, but I did not try now to retro bright that in case you know what it is, as there are still the original stickers on the case which I didn't want to damage. There are even stickers on the bottom side of the computer showing you where to plug in the power supply for example. The ZX80 definitely has some technical design issues, like it could overheat when running for a long period of time. What looks like openings for heat venting on top of the computer are just some lines printed there to let the computer look more interesting and more professional. So in case you get a ZX80, you should be aware that it can get quite hot if you don't do any modifications to the PCB, but I will show you later what you can do to prevent that. Let's have a quick look at the manual. This here is in English language as I got my computer from the UK. When this computer came out in 1980, most people didn't have a computer at home, and I would even say most people never even have used a computer before, so a well-written manual was very important. People did already know electronic games, calculators and electronic watches, but most computers you could find back then were very expensive machines, only used by specialists and experts. With the manual you can not only learn how to use your fancy new computer, but also how to write your own programs using the built-in programming language called BASIC. As the ROM size is only 4K, it must have been quite hard to create a working BASIC development environment, and that's also the main reason why ZX80 BASIC had its limitations, so there is no support for floating point arithmetic, for example. I also got some additional paperwork with my machine, so here to show you some test program that you could type in. And I also got this guarantee card with my computer, but I doubt that it is still valid today. What else came with the computer? Of course you need a power supply, so this is the original one with 9 volts DC output and a UK power plug. There is no voltage regulation within that power supply, and I use a more modern power supply instead, but I will come to that later. If you buy vintage computers, always be careful and measure the output voltage first to check if the power supply is still working as it should. You also got a TV lead to connect your computer to the RF input of your TV, so you didn't need to buy a dedicated expensive computer monitor. It can get tricky to get your ZX80 working on more modern TVs, and you still would need a TV with an analog receiver. I will not use this cable as my machine is modded for video out. You also got those cables to connect your computer to a cassette tape recorder to store your programs and data. This was quite common back then, as floppy disk drives and other storage solutions were very expensive. The tape interface of the Sinclair ZX80 is very unreliable, so you have to experiment with the volume levels to load data from tape. Next, I put the white Sinclair ZX80 beside the later black Sinclair ZX81 model to show you the difference. Those two computers are quite similar, but the ZX81 is much easier to find and also much cheaper. So if you like old school home computer technology and you cannot find a ZX80, just go for a ZX81 instead. In the US there were special Timex Sinclair variants available. You also could get an upgrade kit for your ZX80 back then, so you could upgrade your ZX80 to a ZX81 by using a replacement ROM and a keyboard overlay. You got almost all of the new functionality available on a ZX81, but the upgrade didn't fix the way the screen output was handled, as you didn't change the hardware setup. You will see later why I did mention that and what is so special with the screen output of the ZX80. By the way, if you like retro games with 8-bit color graphics and you want to get a Sinclair machine to play such games, get a Sinclair ZX Spectrum instead. I will not cover Spectrum computers in this video here, but I will link to my ZX Spectrum special video where I show you all the different computers in detail and even in 3D. Now let's talk about replacement keyboards. This is always an important topic, especially when you want to get old Sinclair hardware back to life after all the years. You can get all the different keyboard membranes from SellMyRetro.com. On the left side we see a Repro keyboard for the ZX80, on the right side for the ZX81. The ZX80 version is just a keyboard layer you put on top of the contacts on the PCB, so there are no cables or anything like that. In case you don't know, SellMyRetro is an online trading platform a bit similar to eBay, and the gentleman behind SellMyRetro is Rich Meller, so he sells his own products over SellMyRetro, but also other sellers are offering their great stuff there. Rich is a nice guy and is also very helpful in case you have any questions or problems with one of the products he's selling. Here we can compare now the old original keyboard on the left side with the new Repro one on the right side. They look almost identical, but there are still differences both in how they look and also how they feel when using them. It is great that you can buy Repro keyboard membranes to get your old machine running again, and I replaced my original one with a new Repro one as I wanted a new and fresh look. I set everything up now to test the ZX80. I use a modern regulated power supply. It is not set to 9 volts, only to 6 volts DC, as I replaced the old voltage regulator in the computer with a modern DC-DC converter, and I will explain later why I did that, but basically I can use any DC voltage input from 6 to 20 volts on my modded computer. The former RF out jack is now a video out jack and it is connected to my LCD TV. I use an old school tape recorder to load and save my programs. We switch on the computer by plugging in the power brick, so there is no on-off switch on the computer. We get a black and white image on the screen, and now we can enter a simple program using the built-in programming language BASIC. In such old versions of BASIC you need to type line numbers, and if you are into programming yourself you will immediately understand what I want to do here now. I just will create a simple loop here, counting from 1 to 10, and print each number on the screen. It is quite hard to type that program using the membrane keyboard, and it didn't get easier now with the new Repro keyboard. When we are done editing the program code, we can start our program using the command run. The screen goes black and after that I get the numbers 1 to 10 on the screen. Whenever the Sinclair ZX80 does something in BASIC, the screen will flicker and go black. Even when typing the commands, the screen is flickering, and that's because there is no special video hardware, and when the computer is busy doing something else, there is no time anymore to generate the graphics on the screen, which is different on the later ZX81 model. So when you wanted to write your own games using BASIC, you could make for example adventure games or strategy games, where it does not matter if the screen goes black until you can do your next move on the screen, but it was not that easy or even impossible to make your own arcade-like action games in BASIC. But still, you also can get flicker-free games for your ZX80 written in machine code, which I will show you later. Now we still have our small program in the so-called RAM memory of our computer, and if we switch off power, the program is gone. So if we want to keep our program, we have to store it on tape, and for doing that I put an audio cassette in my tape recorder, and we press the record buttons, and then we use the command save to store the program on tape. Again, the screen goes black and the content of the memory is transferred to the tape recorder using sound signals on the tape interface. Instead of a tape recorder, you can also use more modern sound devices like a digital recorder. Only problem is that the volume level might not be high enough on all modern devices to play back the data to the computer. We can check what is now on our tape, and here we can hear the program data. We could now also load the program back to the memory of the computer by using the basic command load. Let's have a look at memory expansions for the Sinclair ZX80. So obviously 1 KB of memory is not really much, and it was not much back in the days. So if you want to do more with your computer, like writing longer program code or playing more complex games, you need a memory expansion. What you see here is an original early Sinclair memory pack, which gives you 1 to 3 KB of additional memory. Why do I say 1 to 3? Well, you could decide yourself how many RAM chips you would like to buy and put in the memory expansion, or to be more specific, your wallet basically made the decision for you. That memory pack is still in its original box, and the shell of the expansion feels even more flimsy than the one from the computer, so I would not like to put much pressure on it, as this would easily break. There are no screws, Like on the computer, everything is held together with plastic rivets. On the web, someone was saying that there are not many of those expansions around, as they had a very high failure rate. I'm not sure if mine here is still working. Actually, I don't think so. It has all the RAM chips for 3KB on board, but when I tried to load a 3K game using that expansion, it didn't load the program from tape. I didn't have time to investigate it further, and for the better programs you need at least 16KB anyway. The ZX80 and also other Sinclair computers had an expansion port at the back, so that's where you put in the memory pack, and you could also connect the printer there. I even got the original manual with the memory expansion, so I will show you also that. There were also later models of the ZX80 memory pack available in white shells, which give you 16KB of memory, which is sufficient to run the more modern ZX80 programs I will show you later. Those white 16K memory packs are hard to find and can get quite expensive if you need to buy them online. A much easier solution is to get the black 16KB RAM pack for the ZX81 instead, as that one works fine also on the ZX80, and it even says so on the box that it is compatible. So with that memory expansion I can already load all ZX80 software titles from tape and run them, but we will not stop here, as I wanted to do more with my ZX80. This great piece of hardware here is the so-called ZXPand for the Sinclair ZX81 computer, built by a gentleman from the UK by the name of Charlie Robson, also known as Sir Morris, who is quite famous in the Sinclair ZX81 community. I did show the ZXPand on video already in detail, and I will not tell you everything here again now, as this video would get too long, so find a link to my review video in the description text below. But I would recommend to watch my video about the amazing port of the Laserdisc arcade game Dragon's Lair for the ZX81 first. That port was done by Jim Bagley, and it is based on the ZXPand hardware, and this is an impressive showcase what you can do with the ZXPand. The ZXPand is not only a memory expansion, but you get also a SD card based flash drive, so you don't need to fiddle around with a tape recorder anymore. If I would have only a ZX80, it would be questionable if it would be worth buying a ZXPand for the few available ZX80 programs, but as I had the ZXPand already for my ZX81, there was no question for me that I want to use it also on my ZX80, and you can do that with a special conversion kit you can get from SellMyRetro.com. There is a whole ZX80 section on the SellMyRetro trading platform, and you get all kind of cool add-ons and repair parts for Sinclair machines, but also for many other systems. As always, you will find all the links in the description text below. With the conversion kit you get a new replacement gate array logic chip for your ZXPand and a new replacement ROM for your ZX80, as there you need new functionality to load programs from the SD card and select file directories. You even get replacement rivets for the computer case with the kit if you break the original ones when putting in the ROM chip, and you also get a special cable so that you can use the ZXPand on the back of your ZX80 while still having access to the video out jack. The only soldering required is that you need to add a jumper to the ZXPand PCB to switch between ZX80 and ZX81 mode. As that jumper would be beneath the optional sound and joystick add-on I have installed on my ZXPand, I had to use a slightly different approach here, and so I added a switch instead of a jumper. The optional soundboard with the joystick connector is currently not supported by any of the ZX80 programs, at least as far as I know. Even on the ZX81 there are not really many programs using that add-on, which is really unfortunate. Now let's see the ZXPand in action. You can store both ZX80 and ZX81 programs on one single SD card, and I created two subdirectories for ZX80 programs. They have the file name ending .o, and it is a good idea to keep directory and file names as short as possible, as you have to type all of that on the keyboard. For the ZX81 there is a menu tool available where you can click on programs, but on the ZX80 there is no such tool in existence currently. It is also a good idea to put only a few files in one single directory or subdirectory. When I list the directory on my ZX80, I only get the first few files and not all of them. Don't know if this is an issue with the ROM routine or if I'm just too stupid to use it, but anyway, it is not a big deal now as there are not many ZX80 programs existing. So we go to the directory with all the ZX80 games and load a game from there, which is a 3 KB Space Invaders clone made by Micronics. When the new replacement ROM from the ZXPand conversion kit is installed, you still can also load from and save to tape as before, so you don't have to always use the SD card drive if you don't want to. Before we will have a look at some more ZX80 games, I have opened up the computer for you to show you the PCB together with all the modifications I did. My version of the PCB installed is issue 2A. The whole machine was designed by using standard components, there are no special dedicated chips used, so if you get a ZX80 with broken electronics, you still should be able to get repair parts for it. There are always those discussions going on in the collectors community. Should you touch such an old computer and modify it, or should you better keep everything untouched and original? Well, my view on that is that I want to have fun with my machine. I also have a YouTube channel and want to show all my stuff in action there. So for me it means I had to modify my computer, and first I thought about making also a video about that. The problem is that I cannot do soldering work and make a video in proper quality in parallel, as there is not enough space on my desk and I also can only concentrate on one of those tasks. I usually make only some photos with a small camera to document everything I'm doing. So what changes did I make? As I did already mention, I replaced the old keyboard membrane with a new Repro one, then I also replaced the two old original electrolytic capacitors on the PCB with new ones. This is always a good idea to do. As I wanted to avoid any heat in my computer and also wanted to use the ZXPand, which is also powered through the computer, I replaced the standard 7805 voltage regulator with a modern 5V DC-DC converter. My electronics dealer didn't have a version with longer legs, so I had to do this ugly looking solder job here. I used the Tracker Power TSR12450, but there are also other companies making DC-DC converters. You find the classic 78XX voltage regulators in many electronic devices, including old home computers. They are based on a Zener diode and lots of other components around it, and I cannot go into all the details here, but what is important to understand is those voltage regulators can generate a lot of heat depending on the voltage difference between input and output and how much current has to be delivered on the output, and you can still see the heatsink now on the PCB, which is basically not needed anymore with the new DC-DC converter. I only kept it in because it is an original component after all and also adds some weight to the computer. The 7805 voltage regulator that was originally built in takes the DC input and makes 5V DC out of it, hence the 05 in the name 7805. The new replacement converter does the same thing, but much more efficiently, so there is no heat whatsoever anymore, even when connecting a memory expansion or a ZXPand. Another component they replaced to avoid high temperature is the original Z80 CPU. First I thought I will just put a heatsink on top of the CPU, but there is not much space within the case, so I simply replaced the Z80 with a more modern CMOS version of the same CPU, which is still pin compatible and works just fine. That was easy to do as the CPU already had a socket on my version of the PCB. Next I put in the new replacement ROM needed for the ZXPand. You then get a few additional commands needed for storage handling, but your computer is still compatible also with programs written for the 4K ROM from what I've seen so far. Here I also wanted to show the old original CPU and 4K ROM that you see also that. The last modification I did was the video out mod. that TV modulator wasn't really working properly, all I could get was some noisy picture and I didn't want to waste my time now to fix the modulator, so I simply disabled it on my PCB and put a tiny video out module on top of it, and I used the old original RF out jack as the video out jack now. That video out module I used is the excellent ZX80 CCB from a seller with the username Pokemon from SellMyRetro. That's an absolutely brilliant model and I really can recommend that. It is not worth your time anymore building some video out mod yourself using some transistors. Just get that model, which also works on a ZX81 by the way. Go and check that out on SellMyRetro for all the details, I will link also to that. If you are now one of those people that don't want the video out mod as it is too modern for your taste, I can recommend to get at least an old black and white TV like this one here for example. This is my national branded TV TR525ES from 1977 and it does not have any automatic channel search functionality, so you still can set the channel frequency manually, which is perfect for old home computers like the ZX80. If you want to see more about that TV, go and watch my video about the Philips Pong console ES2201, which is one of the more rare and more interesting Pong systems out there. Now let's come to some of the best games for the ZX80 and I can recommend to check out the webpage fruitcake.plus.com. The gentleman behind that page and all the excellent hardware and software you can get from there is Paul Farrow. Most people from the Sinclair community will already know him. One section of his page is dedicated to the ZX80 and you can even download games from there made by himself and others. Paul's flicker-free games ZX Pac-Man and ZX Kong, you can get both as a free download and you also can buy them as physical releases on real tape from him. Yeah, that's what I call old school. If you also want to buy a copy, just send him a mail. Keep in mind that you need at least a 16K memory expansion to run those on real ZX80 hardware. You don't get only 2 great games, but also have the adventure of trying to load those games from tape. Those are definitely 2 of the best games ever made for the ZX80. The ZX80 wasn't really designed having gamers in mind with all the technical limitations, and it can get quite tricky to play action games using the membrane keyboard, but still I like that you can do something useful on your ZX80, and what would be more useful than playing some great conversions of excellent arcade titles. On his webpage Paul also explains how the games work, so go and check that out. This video is already quite long and I hope it is not too boring for you. Next I would like to show you a nice magazine from the US. This is the Sync magazine from 1981, volume 1, number 2. As I told you already, the Sinclair ZX80 was also available in the US, but you could buy this magazine also in the UK. Later issues did cover also the Sinclair ZX81, but here it still says the magazine for Sinclair ZX80 users on the cover. It was produced by Creative Computing. I even had a German version of a book from them back in the 1980s with some program listings for games written in BASIC, but I will not show you that now as there is no time for that. In the Sync magazine you get hardware tips, type-in programs and even comics. I really did enjoy reading this magazine and it would be worth a whole separate video, but for now I can only show you a few pages. Here you see how the computer was marketed in the US. Learn how to use a computer for $249 and keep the computer. I really like this picture here. It looks like a father explaining to his son what is going on the screen, and it is clear why they showed that, as the father is the guy with the wallet that would buy the computer, but being a child of the 1980s I can tell you it was vice versa in most cases. The son told his father what was really going on the screen. This article here is for ZX80 users in Florida and it explains how they can build some kind of uninterruptible power supply using a battery. And I also want to show you this here, where they describe how to make music with your ZX80, even there is no sound hardware built in. The idea here is that you use the VIC EM signal coming out of the CPU together with a radio to listen to the music you generate with a type-in program. Just in case you don't know, back in the 1960s, people that operated those huge computers in data centers used a similar trick to check if the program got stuck in a loop due to some programming error. They had a radio playing beside the computer so they could hear the program execution. So we are already at the end of this video. The game you see on the screen now is a port of the classic Mazox. That game was originally written by Don Priestley and released by Bugbyte in 1981 for the 16K ZX81. And Paul Farrow managed now to port that game over to the ZX80, which is absolutely brilliant. This is definitely the most complex flicker-free action game for the ZX80 I've seen so far, so if you own a ZX80, go to Paul's webpage and download that game. If you want to try out a ZX80 yourself without spending tons of money, there are emulators out there, and a few of them you can start online directly within your web browser without any installation. I'm pretty sure there will be also ZX80 cores available for FPGA computers to simulate the whole Sinclair hardware. Getting a real original ZX80 will be more interesting for older home computer collectors that feel some nostalgia for that little computer, I would say. If you are one of the younger collectors interested in getting a 1980s home computer, I would recommend to check out a Commodore C64, or if you live in Europe, also a Sinclair ZX Spectrum. For both systems you get thousands of games, and still today new modern homebrew titles are coming out for those computers. So I hope this was interesting, entertaining and helpful for you. You know, making videos is a lot of work and very time consuming. And as this is a non-commercial hobby activity, this is a free service for you, so please consider subscribing to my channel to show your support. You will find a lot of stuff here you have not seen on a million other YouTube channels before. Please like, share and feel free to leave a comment. Say hello to us also on Facebook, and as always, thanks for watching.